And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Once again, it is another episode of the world famous Keepin It Rio podcast. As we've described on previous episodes, this is your favorite podcast, and I appreciate that. So this is a milestone episode, and I was just telling today's guest a little bit about this before we hit the record. Episode 175 of Keepin It Rio today, and I have gone out and found myself an expert in something that I've been kind of focusing on the last few episodes, which is one of my favorite things, one of my passions, and that is homeowners insurance and how homeowners can avoid some things that could potentially drive them crazy, how they can work with the best companies, and some insights from professionals. So today I have got just that. I've got an expert. I've got a very good friend of mine on the program, a golf buddy, if you will. And he is I'll just say it, we were just talking about it. He's an Ohio State Buckeye fan who claims to be a Notre Dame and a Michigan guy, but we all know everybody deep down is a Buckeye. So without any hesitation, I would like to welcome my friend, Mr. Jay Franklin, to Keepin It Rio. Jay, good morning, my friend. How's it going?
Good morning. It is going great, Chuck. I got about 30 minutes of sleep last night, so this could be really crazy. We had
I think that's good.
A 40-year-old birthday party for my one of my stepsons, my oldest stepson. And I know that I look 40 myself. It's hard to believe that I'd have a 40-year-old, but, looks are deceiving.
I was getting ready to ask, how in the world did they allow a young child who must have been no older than 4 or 5 years old at the time to adopt to stepchild a kid at that point? But hey, you're a marvel in many ways, so not even questioning, my friend. So Jay, I appreciate you. And it's funny because we met many years ago, and I did that little joke right there about the Ohio State thing. But the first time you and I met, I actually came into your office in San Antonio about 5 years ago. And I don't know if you remember this or not. Maybe, I'm sure you probably do. But I came in and I found out that neither of us were actually native Texans, and we had come from a different region. And at that point, my inner child came in and I did that Ohio State thing. So tell us a little bit about yourself, because we know that deep down, you're not really a worldwide Ohio State Buckeye. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into the insurance.
All right. Well, I do love Ohio, and I love Columbus, and it's a beautiful city. I've been there many times, and I've got a lot of good friends there, including yourself. So Ohio's a great place. I grew up in southwestern Michigan. So we were about 30 minutes from Notre Dame, which is why I brought that up. And where I lived, you were either Michigan or you were Notre Dame fans. And you saying that I'm kind of a Michigan and Notre Dame fan, I don't know that those really even exist. Because if you were a Notre Dame fan, the Michigan people hated you. It's like, if you're for the Republicans or the Democrats, you're like one or the other. And if you like Michigan, and the Notre Dame people just didn't like you either. You couldn't like them both. But I've been to a few Notre Dame games. I've been to a few Michigan games. I like them both. I'm probably more of a professional fan, but no, I do. I'm from Michigan originally. It does hold a place in my heart, although I haven't lived there since about 1985. I've been close, and I'm there a lot. They don't have any family there, but that's where I grew up. I didn't get my start in insurance. I worked in building materials, so probably why we get along and have the same crazy kind of quirky attitude.
We've inhaled a lot of drywall dust in our days.
Yeah, but I started in 1980 selling building materials, sold doors, windows, sold kitchen cabinets, worked for several manufacturers. I moved to South Bend for a while and lived in South Bend when Notre Dame won the national championship. So I wasn't really even a huge Notre Dame fan then, but when you live in South Bend and Lou Holtz is there and you're winning the championship, that was, really great time to be there. It was a lot of fun, and Notre Dame was huge, and everybody just loved it. It was also the same year that, around the same time, we weren't too far from Chicago, that the Bears won the Super Bowl. So a lot of our TV stations came from Chicago. So that was kind of exciting as well to see that, be part of that. But I lived in Indiana. I lived in Indianapolis for many years. I moved to Florida, and just before I moved to Florida, I started working for one of the largest window companies in the country. And I traveled a lot, and I got transferred down to Florida in 2008, just about the time the economy crashed. I think when we moved there, probably a good third of the houses were in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure. It was a horrible time. I think you've worked in Florida and seen some of that as well.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I moved down there, and we lost 75% of our business in the first year that I was there. It was really depressing. And my little division of the company I worked for, we had like 30 people when I moved to Florida. By the time I left, well, I left Florida a few years ago, but probably within 4 years, we were down to 4 of us that covered probably the eastern half of the country. So it was an ugly time to be in building materials. But I love Florida. I moved there shortly after Katrina and all of that. We were there 8 years, never had a hurricane, a tropical storm, or anything where we were at. That's what everybody kept saying. How can you go to Florida? There's all these, hurricanes, and which is bad in the roofing, actually good in the roofing industry, bad in the insurance industry. And, alligators, tornadoes, all of that. But we had a good time down there. And the year we moved here to San Antonio, they had their first hurricane in Jacksonville for years. So we just missed out on that. And we moved here probably 8 years ago or so, 9 years ago. I started, I was traveling a lot still. I was going up to all over the country. I was in Iowa one day in the winter. It was 16 below zero. It was the actual temperature. I had to get gas in my rental car. And as I'm doing that, sitting there thinking, I've got to get off this traveling. I moved away from Michigan because I didn't like all of this. And now, here I am living in this. Half the year I'm up in that cold weather. So an opportunity came along to open an insurance office, and I started out as an Allstate insurance agent at the office that you visited me in. And I did that for about 5 years, and then determined that at that point, Allstate was a great company. It was a great learning experience. They did a lot for us, but I could see that we weren't always offering the customer the best option. So we decided we were going to open up an independent agency and be a broker and be able to offer dozens of companies instead of just one. And so we moved to that about 2 years ago, and haven't looked back since. We've just been doing that. And so I've got 4 grandchildren. My wife has 4 grandchildren. We're both actually the same age. Hers are a little bit older than mine, but we have a good time. And this is home and loving San Antonio, and got to meet a lot of great people like yourself.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, that's a really cool story. And it's funny how most of us that are in building supplies at some point have that 16 below zero day where we're looking around thinking, what am I doing? Why am I out here right now doing this? And I remember standing on the back of a shingle truck in a blizzard in Columbus one day, decked out in my Carhartts. I had 3 layers on. I had a giant beard. And I just remember thinking, man, this is kind of fun, but it would be fun if I did it voluntarily. When you're told that you have to go out and do it, it's not that fun. So I had my moment. And I ended up in North Carolina away from that. And now we migrated to Texas, and it's been great. And I really like what you said there about, focusing the most on being able to provide the best options for your clients. And when you and I met, it was basically because when I came to San Antonio, I found a couple of the really good areas of town, and I wanted to focus on those pockets. And you were over there in Stone Oak, and I felt like anybody that's over here is going to focus on quality, is not going to be the cheapest per se, but they're going to be the one that's going to provide these folks with the best protection. And that's why I knocked on your door and came in and did the lunch and learn that day with you. And I've never felt anything different. You're one of the guys that I really feel is in it for the right reasons. You're here to help people. You're not just going to take on clients just to pad your stats or put money in your bank. And I think that's very refreshing because I know some people that aren't like that. And, it's really cool. Let's kind of jump in here. Like I said, we're going to do kind of like a FAQ. I want to bring as much value to the San Antonio and homeowners nationwide. Quite honestly, this show is it's seen all over the world. It's crazy. If you look at some of the statistics, I've had people from everywhere on here, and we're very popular, like in Nigeria and places like that. So it's kind of cool. Maybe we can help someone in Nigeria with their homeowners insurance today. So
yeah, they need insurance. So I had somebody call me a couple weeks ago that I couldn't really help them a whole lot, but her parents had passed away in Italy, and she was going back to Italy to figure out their estate, but they didn't have insurance on their house, and she was going to take a while to do all of this and needed to get insurance on it. I didn't really know what to tell her, but
as much as you'd like to jump on a plane and go over there and assess everything in person, it's not always practical. And that's kind of a cool deal though. Every once in a while you just insure somebody over in Italy just for fun, insured by Jay Franklin. That's pretty awesome. So
cool.
Let's talk a little bit about this. And I'm going to start at the very beginning and be very basic with it because most homeowners are on that level. Most of the people that I've worked with in my 26 years, when it comes to insurance claims, I'd say probably 90% of them have never gone through the process in any way. So the first question that I always like to talk to homeowners about when we sit down is, what exactly does your homeowner's insurance policy cover? Because there are a lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of people that think, well, there's a stain on my ceiling, so therefore it needs to be paid for because I've been buying my insurance. And sometimes that's not always the case because it doesn't cover all these types of things. So when someone is out there, Jay, and they're looking for their very first homeowner's policy, they call you up. What are some of the things that are included in this insurance policy that you're going to offer to the homeowners? What kind of things are they expecting to be responsible for on their end, and so on and so forth?
Well, the nice thing about the homeowner, especially a new homeowner, that they'll find is that their mortgage company is going to pay for it. So, even though you are paying for it, it goes to the mortgage company. There's no real headaches in trying to keep up with the billing or anything else. But by the other side of it, since everything's a lot of it's going to the mortgage company, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and people don't really know even what they have. And it's important they know what they have when they start, but going forward, kind of interesting thing. Before I was in insurance, when I was in Florida, we built a new house, and the builder strongly suggested we use their mortgage company to get extra discounts, and we use their insurance company because it made it really easy. It wasn't really their company, but I'm sure they got some kind of a kickback or something for it. Well, so the insurance, I said, sure. I signed everything. I got a big old packet of like 200 pages that actually some people actually do read through, but 99% of them don't. I put it away. After a few years, I didn't even know where it was. I didn't know who my insurance was. I knew the mortgage. I knew it was being paid because it was in my escrow and I saw it being paid every month. But I thought, well, I've got to find out who my insurance is because I don't even know. I can't even shop around. I can't do anything because I don't know who my insurance company is after living there I think we were there for probably almost 4 years. And I called the builder's home office and asked them, hey, where is our homeowners insurance? What do you try to put us into? Because I wanted to shop around and I didn't even know who we had. And I think a lot of homeowners are in that same boat. You just put it out, you forget about it. The mortgage company keeps paying it and you keep making sure that it's getting paid and you don't know anything else. You get a letter once a year from an insurance company and you know that's your homeowner's insurance. I don't need that for anything. It's already being paid. You maybe look at it, you maybe don't. You toss it in a pile or the revolving file, and it's gone. So, I mean, the insurance, the one thing you think about is that it does pay for your home. If you had a catastrophic disaster, you had a tornado that blows down your home, a fire, and that happens a lot more than what people think it does. And I know you've seen a lot of that. Here in San Antonio, I think every day or two I see where a house has burned to the ground. Apartments just down the street from us, and there's some apartments over by Northern Hills Golf Course that one of the buildings caught on fire, and the whole building is pretty much destroyed. So the insurance covers the building part of it, which everybody thinks, but it will cover up to the amount that the insurance says it will cover. So if you're like the last few years, homeowners home prices have been, you know what they've done. They've
through the roof.
skyrocketed.
Pardon the expression. Yes.
They've gone up 40% or so. So your insurance may not cover it. Normally, insurance policy will increase depending on what the insurance company calculates as a replacement cost. Although some of these companies have millions of policyholders, so they're not looking at your policy and saying, well, look, Chuck Allen's house is worth this today, and we've got to make sure we do it. They just have a thing that they put into everywhere, and they figure Texas is going to go up 15%. Well, maybe you're living in a really nice area of Texas, of San Antonio, and the rates, how homeowner prices are going up. Home prices are going up way more than the average. You may not be insured for enough. You may have a home that you insured for $250,000. Today, the replacement cost is $400,000, and the insurance may cover $320,000. So if you have a total loss, you will be out that extra $80,000. So if you want to rebuild your house or move out, take a total loss and move out and move into another house of the same value, you're going to be missing that $80,000. So that's a big thing that you need to look for and keep an eye on homeowners insurance, is that you're covering the cost of what it takes to replace your house. And a lot of people don't know this, if you've got a insurance that will cover just 80% of the cost of your home, every claim you have, they will only cover 80% of the cost of that claim, and then the deductible. So if your roof, for example, you have a total loss on your roof because of a hailstorm or a lightning strike or something, and you've got a $400,000 house, your insurance is $320,000. So you've got, what is that, 20% difference, and your roof costs $20,000 to repair, we'll just say. They're only going to say your roof now has a value of 20% of that. So you've only got, what is that, $16,000. And then you're going to take your deductible off of that, which could be anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. Now you've got to pay $10,000 for your roof instead of just that amount of your deductible. So people don't really look into that. The other thing is your replacement costs. This is your property, your personal property. This is a very inexpensive part of your insurance. Costs just a few dollars a month to replace everything in your house. And a lot of people think, well, I've got a big screen TV, I've got a couch, a nice couch, and nice bedroom set, and all of this. They don't think about, if you've got a good insurance agent, you're going to have this covered. But they don't think about, what does it cost to replace, all the underwear that we have, all of the socks, our silverware, every single thing that you own. If you had to go to the store and replace everything you've accumulated over however long, 10 years, 15 years, in my case, 40 years, there's a lot of stuff that you'd have to replace. Some of it is not, is irreplaceable, family heirlooms, pictures, wedding pictures, children's pictures, all of that. But, a lot of it, people don't realize that all of those things add up to quite a lot of money. And it's also a good idea on your personal property to go through every once in a while and take a video. It's so easy to do now with your cell phone, and it goes up to the cloud and it's there forever, even if your cell phone gets lost in a fire. Now, every time I've taken a flight somewhere across the country, I do look in that cloud. I want to see where my stuff is, and I've never seen it up there. I don't even know where this cloud is, but all of my stuff's supposedly in the cloud. But it's a good idea to take pictures. Then if you do have a loss, and hopefully, most people never will, But if you do and something happens, you've got pictures of your antique furniture or your very expensive, your very expensive pottery or whatever you have. It's a good idea to have pictures of all of that. And increasing your property from, say, $50,000 to $250,000 is probably $2 a month. It's so little, and a lot of insurance agents don't look at that. And if you get somebody that's trying to get you the lowest possible price you can, you call an insurance agent, you say, I want the best price that you can get me. And if you have an inexperienced insurance agent, they will give you the minimum of everything that they can, even though it costs $1 a month. They're still going to go down because they want to get you the rock bottom price and don't really explain it to you. So it's a good idea to get pictures of that. Also covers if somebody gets hurt on your property. If somebody comes, we have door-to-door salespeople coming to our house almost every day, selling internet, selling bug control. You have a lot of that down here in the South. Selling, yard service, maintenance, all kinds of things. And if one of those people gets hurt, just walk into your house, your yard. I don't happen to have a sprinkler system in my yard. I always have a hose. I'm lazy, and I always have a hose spread across my yard. If they trip over that and hit their head on my driveway or my sidewalk, I'm responsible for that. Even though I didn't invite them on my property, they're not guests of mine. But if they get hurt here, somebody walking their dog on my sidewalk, and they can get hurt, and they can sue you, and they'll probably most likely win and get something. Most people will have, some companies will just give you a very minimal amount, $10,000, $50,000 worth of coverage for that. Again, most people have at least 100,000 up. Some people will get 300,000 if you've got a good agent, or 500,000 even. The difference from $50,000 in liability coverage up to 300,000 is, again, it's probably less than $2 a month, probably not even $1 a month. So those kind of things, are things you can take to help you. Another thing people don't know about their homeowners insurance and the liability part of that, and I didn't really even know that. I was selling insurance for a couple of years before I heard this story. But another agent was telling me they had a customer whose high school child got in a fight at school, and somebody was picking on him or something, and he pushed him, and the kid fell down the stairs and broke his collarbone, and was in the hospital for a long time. He had some other things, I guess. But anyway, they sued the parents of the kid, and the homeowners insurance actually paid out that claim. They paid $70,000 or $80,000 to the person that got hurt. So you don't really think about that it will cover you away from home, which it does. The same thing with your property. If you've got your property in your car or you're on vacation, somebody steals your fancy jewelry or something of value, you can actually turn that into your insurance company too. It will cover up to 10% of the value of your personal property anywhere in the world. So that's something good to know. And then alternative living costs. If you were out of your house for whatever reason, a few years ago during the pandemic, when the supply chain was really horrible and people were waiting, I'm sure you saw some of that. I don't know if it was as bad with roofing, but everything was just taking forever. We had some relatives that had a floor that was, they had a leak. They were out of town. A water pipe leaked in their ice maker and ruined their whole hardwood floor. The whole downstairs was hardwood, and it took them, I think it was 7 or 8 months before they got the flooring in stock so they could put it in. So, they were living there most of the time, but a lot of times you can't. And your insurance will cover you to live somewhere else. That's another thing that, for whatever reason, some people will, I don't know if they think they're doing a favor to the insurance company by keeping their claim costs low if something happens. It happens so rarely, it's not a big deal. But again, the difference between 20,000 in living expenses versus 200,000 in living expenses, a couple dollars, probably less than $10 for the whole year. And there's no reason not to have that. And if you have to be out of your house for an extended period of time, if it burns to the ground, or in the case of an apartment, you get the same thing in an apartment. The building caught on fire. I'm sure a few of those apartments in that building are probably okay, but you're not going to be allowed to live in there until that whole building is back to normal. And they could be out of that apartment for a while, and they'll cover your living expenses somewhere for up to 2 years if you've got enough coverage on there. So it's another thing that's really important to have. So
Boy, there's a lot to think about right there as a
yeah,
homeowner. And I see a lot of people that, when you explain it in those terms, Jay, it's like you guys are literally for a few dollars putting yourself in a very vulnerable position where you're saving 20 or 30 bucks a
right,
year, and
right.
you're potentially costing yourself the peace of mind and the
Mhm.
ability to go somewhere if a disaster does
Right,
occur. So take that into account. There are different, just like in contracting, there are different levels of professionalism in insurance. And Jay hit the nail on the head. There are several people that get into a specific trade or industry, and whether they do this intentionally or not, it's human nature sometimes to always shoot to be the cheapest or the lowest price. For whatever reason, people have been conditioned to think that that's the attractive option, and it really never is. It always ends up
right.
being the worst. So let me ask you this. Okay, a homeowner gets the insurance policy, and they've got their home coverage. They're covered on, enough to where if their home was completely destroyed, they would be okay. They wouldn't be out of pocket 80,000 or 100,000 because of the variables there. Are there any limitations that are included in these policies? I know you just mentioned that you lived in a hurricane prone area. You didn't get a hurricane, but as soon as you left, the hurricane came through. Let's say that somehow, we're here in Texas and we get things like tornadoes and stuff. If someone's home were to get hit by, maybe not a tornado, but let's say a flooding down in Houston is prominent. And I know that a lot of homeowners cannot even get coverage because of how frequent the flooding
Right.
is. Here in the San Antonio market, are there any things like that are included in policies where folks maybe need to be aware of the fact and it would be something they could add on? Or is that something that's not even a consideration because it just doesn't happen?
Well, it's with the way the climate is changing, and there's no argument that things are changing, whether we're responsible for it, whatever side of the aisle you're on, whether we're responsible for it, we can do something about it or not. The climate has been changing for the whole time the Earth's been here. And right now we're in a period of a lot of catastrophic storms. And here in Texas, especially, Houston is right in the bullseye of rain. I mean, just before I got into insurance, I was still in building materials, and I was going over to Houston a lot. And they had that hurricane that came through, Harvey, I think it was. And so many people were flooded that had never been flooded. They'd lived there 70 years in their house. They've been family home for 100 years. They'd never had a flood, never had a problem. And all these houses are flooding. And it's again happening this year. They've had tons of flooding again. Flooding is not covered under most homeowners insurance. What homeowners insurance will cover is anything that's sudden and accidental. So going back to that, if you have, and it's your responsibility to mitigate any problems once you see it. So if you've got a leak in your house, it's been, behind the sink, the water's been leaking, and you mop up a little bit every few days or a couple of weeks, you mop up a little bit, but that water's coming out of there somewhere. And that's not sudden and that's not accidental. It is, you didn't cause it, but you know that it's there, and it is going on so long that there are insurance policies that you can get that will cover certain things like that. But if you go and you call the insurance company, and they'll come in and they'll pull out you have the walls pulled out and they can see mold in there that's been growing for years, they will not cover that. That's a claim that won't be covered. Flooding, water is really rough. You being in the roofing industry, I was in windows and doors for a long time. Water is a problem, and especially here in Texas, where you've got so many big storms, some of the water comes down in ice. But if you get a flood, homeowners insurance won't cover it unless you have flood insurance. And even if you're not in a floodplain, it's not a bad idea to have flood insurance. If you're in a floodplain, your homeowner's insurance company will probably, or your mortgage company will require that you have flood insurance. They just will require it. They'll say you're in a flood zone. So many of these storms now are so strong, and they're in your 100-year storms, 1,000-year storms. I mean, there's storms that they said would never happen, and places are flooding. You're building these cities up like Houston, and there's so much cement, there's nowhere for the water to go. And so you're getting flooding in places where we haven't had them before. And you have to have flood insurance to get it. If you're in a place that's not a flood zone, it's not very expensive. If you're in Houston, it's probably a good idea that you would have flood insurance. Certain places here in San Antonio, you have a hard time finding water around. You've been in Florida too. Everywhere you go in Florida, there's water on every corner. You've got a pond. They call them a lake, but you have a little pond. Here, there's no water, and you don't really think about it. But there are a lot of areas where there's nowhere for that water to go. And, we have huge runoffs all around town that take the water away. But if water's getting in your house from a flood, from a heavy rainstorm, that won't be covered. When I lived in Indiana, we had a storm that the time we were there, the worst storm we had when we were there. And I couldn't even drive down my street. The street was so full of water, and we had it coming in our basement. We took care of it. Fortunately, my basement wasn't finished, but insurance wouldn't have covered it. I would have not known to get flood insurance. I would never thought about it. But anytime water comes into your house from rain or from a river that rises or anything, that is not covered. That's different than if a pipe bursts in your house, or if the sewer line clogs outside because of a tree root or something. There is special insurance for water that comes in from the outside, but most people have it. It's good to have. It's called water backup coverage. Not everybody has it. If you have a good agent, again, you usually have it. But flooding is a big thing that they don't cover. Hailstorms, right up your alley. If you have hail damage on your roof, 90% of the time it's going to be covered. If you have hail damage, it's usually going to be covered by the company. But if they come out and find that you've had hail damage in the past and this is all old hail damage, they're not going to replace it. There are a lot of shysters out there in the roofing industry, and they know you're one of the better ones, and you don't do that. And this is huge in Florida. But there are a lot of people out there that are just coming from out of town, and every time there's a storm, they're going door to door and saying, hey, your neighbor got a free roof, and we'll pay the deductible, and we'll do all this. Well, number one, if they're paying the deductible, it's against the law. So you're committing insurance fraud. And if they're charging enough where they can pay the deductible, they're probably charging you way too much. It's a company coming from out of town, and something happens. I see you on Facebook all the time going out to homes where things have been done wrong. You can't call those people back because they're in Minnesota. They're not here because there's no storms, and they're not reputable. So that's one thing that to get a good roofing guy out there to look at your roof, because those fly-by-night roofing guys that travel the storm circuit, they'll come out and tell you you're going to get a new roof, and they'll say, hey, I'm getting Joe across the street is getting a new roof, and Karen over there is getting a new roof, and I can get you a new roof. And the insurance companies are have lost a lot of money on that over the years, and there have been lots of litigation over that, and I think that's starting to change a little bit. And one thing on your roofs that you need to keep an eye on is that if your roof is over, it's been 15 years, I've seen some companies go to 10, but your roof will get replaced 100% minus your deductible if you have a roof that's under 15 years old. If your roof gets over 15 years old, then they're going to start, all insurance companies, most, are going to start prorating it. Some companies will let you purchase extra coverage that might give you replacement cost, but it'll be expensive. But once you get 15 years, if you have a 25-year-old roof, they're going to prorate that out, and you're probably going to get pennies on the dollar for that roof. So it's a good idea. I mean, if you've got a roof that's bad, it's a good idea to have it checked out. Make sure that before you buy a house, make sure it's got a roof that has at least 10 years of life left in it. I've seen insurance companies, part of their underwriting process now is if you've got a roof that's over so many years and you don't really know how old it is, their inspector will come out and determine if it's got 5 or 10 years of good life left into it. They will insure it. But if it doesn't, they'll say, you've got to have a new roof or we're not insuring it. I'm sorry. So that's a big deal. The roof is probably your biggest deal on homeowners insurance. Roof and water line breaking, water softener or water heater leaking or something like that are probably the 2 biggest claims. And the roof is probably one of the most expensive ones because you don't always, the water usually catch right away. There's water on your floor. You wonder where it came from, and you take care of it pretty quick. But the roof, you don't really know. Maybe you get a leak, paint over it once or twice, and you'll kind of leave it. But the roof is really important on the insurance side of it, and yours too. So that's been a big thing, and I'm sure you see that a lot when you go out to homes, whether the insurance can cover it or not cover it, depending on the age and the type of roof, and if it really has damage. During the big freeze that we had here 3 or 4 years ago, it was kind of funny for me, probably maybe for you too. The whole town shut down. It was 10, 20 degrees for a few days.
It was a disaster. As someone from Ohio, snow. I couldn't help but smile.
Yeah, this much snow, and it just didn't go away because it was cold. So it was dangerous, the underpasses and the overpasses, driving around. I drove a lot, but I wouldn't have wanted people out there that didn't know what they were doing because there were slippery spots and it would have been ugly here. There's no way, they don't have any way to get rid of the snow. It doesn't stay here long when they get it. But a lot of people had ice build up on their roofs. Some snow, it melted a little bit and it created ice dams, which ice, maybe you can explain that. But yeah. Ice, as far as what I think is ice builds up along the
eaves there, and it's a giant chunk of ice, and it's got to go somewhere. It starts to melt, and typically, because of the way that it's formed, it starts melting from the backside, and it's actually diverting itself from flowing off, so it starts going side to side, and a lot of soffits and fascias were destroyed during the big freeze. I was in College Station and I watched it happen all over town, and it was interesting. That was one of those things that had never happened. Nobody would have ever foreseen that being a possibility until it happened. And then it's like, wow, okay, maybe we should have thought about that at some point in the history of mankind. But hey, we live for the moment. And when the moment hits us, we realize, probably should have checked to see if there was water in that swimming pool before we hit the high dive. So it happens. So
if that's coming in your house because of a water dam from the ice, even though it's because of the weather, most insurance companies won't cover that. Up north, people get rid of the ice if it's on your roof. If you've got a newer home, built in the last 40 years, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of ice building up on your roof up north because they're insulated enough. A funny story, we lived in Michigan. We lived close to Lake Michigan, so we had tons of lake effect snow. And it would not be uncommon for us to have 3 feet of snow in one day. And it'd be great. School would be out. maybe for a day. Down here, school's out,
Yeah.
for a week because of a half an inch of snow. But up there, school would be out for a day. But we had about 3 feet of snow. We had times where we couldn't even see our house. We lived in a ranch style 1-story home and on the golf course, and we got a lot of wind. And there were times when you could not even see outside through the windows out the house. And when you looked at the house, you could barely see the gutter. It was so big. Well, my dad made us go out and shovel the roof one time, and we had a sloped roof. I was probably 14, 15 when he made us do that, and we never had a leak in our house. It was just up there, and it's not going to cave in because the roof sloped enough. It starts melting and gets heavier, it's going to all fall off. But he said, you got to go up there. I don't know. I guess I'm a bad parent because I never made my kids do crazy things like that. I always did it myself when they said no. But my parents made me do it. And we had huge windows in the front, in the back, looked out to the golf course. And I'm shoveling the snow off from there. We had some bushes, and I looked, and there's tons of snow. So I stomped around on the roof right there, and I jumped off into the pile of snow right in front of the window where they're watching TV in the nice warm house while I'm outside. And I didn't like height. I don't like heights. So I went in. I said, "Oh my gosh, it's so slippery up there. It's really dangerous." And we've never had a problem. I don't think we should be up there. And they said, "Get your butt back up there on the roof and finish that." So, but I just fell off. I don't care. Get back up there. They probably knew I jumped off, but I stomped around and made sure I made enough noise so they thought I fell down and then rolled off. But it didn't work.
I can appreciate the effort, though, for sure. I know that's not a very fun task. I've been tasked with that in my day as well, and it's not fun. So any attempt to get out of that is going to be much respected because I think we put more effort into the show than we do actually just doing it and being done. But that's life, and that's what the best part of it is. So let me ask you this, okay? I have a lot of homeowners who they have never been through this, like we said, and a homeowner's insurance claim can be somewhat daunting. And you really brought up a word that I love, and that word was mitigation. And I always meet these homeowners who, they don't want to do anything because, well, my roof's not leaking. I don't see any problems. There's nothing going on. And you really hit on it, especially with the roof. It does take a while for that damage to maybe find itself inside the house. And I've often told homeowners that in my career, the people that have gotten the worst end of the stick are the people that did what they thought was right. And what I mean by that is my roof's not leaking. I don't see any damage. I don't want to file an insurance claim because it's not the right thing to do. And, even though everybody on the street is getting their new roofs, mine just isn't damaged enough. What are some of the things that can come from that mindset with a homeowner as far as just, hey, my roof's not that bad. I don't even need anybody to come look at it because it's not leaking. Some of the things that can go wrong, you just hit on the fact that if your roof gets to a certain age, it's not going to be covered anymore. If you've got hail damage that's deemed to be outside of a specific window, there's a likelihood that you may not be able to get that covered. So when a homeowner gets hit with a storm, why is it super important that they do their duty as the policyholder, what they had agreed to, which is to mitigate any damages, to prevent any future potential damage to the property? Why is that so important? And why should people think differently than they do when it is, I'm doing what's right, when in reality, they're doing what's probably wrong?
Right. Well, you have the insurance to take care of the big problems. Today, I would say in this environment we're in, if you can mitigate problems from happening down the road, or you have small claims that you can just take care of on your own, and have maybe higher deductibles, that is a good way to keep your insurance costs low. Any claim is going to probably raise your rates, depending on what it is. Insurance companies call hurricanes, hailstorms, something where a large percentage of customers in that area are going to have some kind of claim. They call it a catastrophe. So I get emails every day that says this part of Texas, has been declared a catastrophe. It's catastrophe number 172 or whatever it is. Those claims actually do not hurt you as far as your rates go on your current insurance. But if you go out and you shop around, they do take a little bit into account that it was from a catastrophe, but it will still affect your rates if you go shop around to other companies. So the best thing to do is to not have a claim, but the insurance is there to take care of any claims that you have. And you don't want your house to leak. If you've got little problems, they usually, especially if they're water, turn into big problems. And when you go to sell your house, you may not have a problem today. It may not bother you that you've got some mold in your attic or some wet spots that dry up pretty quickly. I put some plastic up there, and us old people, I don't know if you know, but us old people know what Visqueen means.
Oh
But
yeah, I love Visqueen. I carry it
nobody
with me
knows
in
what that
every
word is
job, just in
anymore.
case of a pop-up shower. Like that
Yeah, but
stuff
they'll
could
put
serve as
something
a
in there
roof
and say,
surface
"Oh,
for
I
a
don't,
year.
no, I don't need it. It's just a tiny leak." But if you go to sell your house, they're going to send an inspector out, and then you're going to have to fix all these things, and it could be expensive. So you want to catch things as early as you can. And then you've talked about where the roof comes into the chimney a lot of times, where you've had to go out and you've made a little.
Oh yeah, we rebuild those crickets right there on site, and it's the most common error that I find in roofing systems all over San Antonio. It's a very bad situation.
Right. Yeah. Mine is, and so I should have you come out here and do mine. But if you've got a little problem, or if you have a question about a claim, the best thing you can do is really call Chuck Allen, call Rio Roofing, or a good reputable roofing company, not somebody that just does insurance work, that advertises all over the place. That if you had a hailstorm, call us and we'll come out, and all this stuff. If you've got a good call a good roofing company, have them come out and inspect it. And if they're reputable, they'll come out and they'll tell you, hey, your roof is not bad. You don't have to worry about it. You've got a little bit of hail damage, but the granules are still all good, and there's nothing really wrong with your roof. But maybe they do have a little spot that, like where the chimney is, or you find some things up there that they can fix today that will prevent some problems later. Spending a few $100s, $1,000, or whatever on small problems today are going to keep you from having a claim down the road where you may have a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible, and you've got to pull all that money out of your pocket, out of your bank, to go get it fixed, and it's a big problem. If you let a roofing problem go, and the roof is probably one of the worst things to let go, because that leaks into your attic. You don't really notice it right away in a lot of cases, so you're going to have mold building up there. The plywood up under the shingles it's going to get spongy, so you're going to have to replace that, which is more cost. And then once water starts coming in, you've got drywall that needs to be replaced. A small leak generally will turn into a big leak at some point, and now maybe you have to replace all your flooring, or you could have a lot of problems. You go out of town and you come home and all your clothes in your closet are all soaking wet, and the floor is wet, and the drywall is all wet because that leak got worse. So the best thing you can do on those kind of things is really, we recommend people call a roofing company. Here's a couple of them. Give somebody a call, have them come out and look at it. You're probably right. You probably don't have a claim. If you call the insurance company, they'll send a claims person out and look at it. But once you call the insurance company, and you tell them, a lot of people don't know this, but you tell them, hey, we just had a storm. I think I may have some roof damage. Can you have an inspector come out and look at it? Once I hit that send button on the insurance for them to send an inspector out there, you have a claim, whether they do anything or not, whether you might get $0. They may say you have a perfect roof. You're not going to get upcharged as much for that claim, but it is a claim. It's going to count as a claim. If you have 3 or 4 of those, you may not be able to get insurance with some companies because they'll say you had 4 claims. They were all 0 paid out. I didn't pay anything, but they were claims. And the best thing you can do is call a professional to come out there. The adjusters are also on the side of the insurance company for the most part. There are really good ones out there that want to take care of the customers. And I think most insurance companies want to take care of the customers, but the adjusters, kind of like we were talking about earlier, they think they're doing the company a favor by not paying out a claim. It's just going to affect my profit sharing if we have too many claims. Well, 2 or 3 little claims on a company that does $80 billion a year isn't going to really affect your profit sharing. But in their head, they think, that's drilled into their head, we have profit sharing, we need to be profitable and, do the right thing, but don't just give stuff away because, you're out there. They may or may not do something, but you have a claim. And once you have a claim, it's there. You can't get it off, even if it's 0. And you call Chuck and he'll come out and, take a look at it and advise you and maybe find some other problems. And I know I've seen that on your Facebook posts a lot where you've gone out to houses and you found problems for people. Some of them want to fix it. Some of them don't, but at least they know now. And a lot of people, if they really care about their home, the value of it, or things, staying good, they'll take care of it. But it's best to just have a professional come out there and take a look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. And, I'll tell a quick story. I know I told you that I like to keep these around an hour. I've got 2 other topics I'd like to touch on.
Okay,
if we can go a little bit beyond it, that'd be cool if you're down with that. But I want to tell a quick story. So I just signed up a family here in San Antonio this past week for a roof replacement. And it started off with me going out because their chimney was leaking and they saw an ad that I had posted that we're specialists at chimney flashings. I came out there and I looked at the roof. There were a lot of deficiencies on it. There were some things that really were starting to show signs of age. So I spoke to the homeowner and I said, hey, look, just me being a professional, I want to let you know your roof is starting to age. It's starting to show those signs. I don't know if you've received anything from your insurance carrier yet, but you may be expecting at some point in the not too distant future that they're going to kind of tell you that because of the age, it's going to change and there's going to be some variables. And he mentioned at that point that another roofer had been out about a week earlier and had told him to file a claim because there was hail damage. Now, Jay, I've been doing this 26 years. I've probably been on 100,000 different roofs all over the United States, and I know what hail damage looks like. Right. And this gentleman did not have hail damage. He had blistering, and it was because he had a 4,200 square foot roof surface, and he had 2 little dome vents on it. And that was what was causing the heat. It couldn't get out. So it was literally cooking the shingles and causing those blisters, which is a, popping of the asphalt that's also exposing things. But he was advised by the other roofer to contact his insurance company. And when we spoke, I said, look, let me come over and explain this to you because I know you're probably not going to be happy with what happens if you go that route. And again, I'm a contractor. I'm not allowed to give him too much to think about because of UPPA and all that. But I said, look, based on my knowledge of roof systems, I want to show you the difference between a hail claim or a hail strike and a blister. And I did. I sat down with the gentleman for 15 minutes. I had full details. I had photos, illustrations to show him the difference as well as the condition of his. And he thanked me profusely. He signed the retail deal to do the roof replacement because I based it on the truth. And I told him, you're going to be upset if you go that route. If you want to go that route, I'll still support you. But I'm going to tell you on the front end, I'm not going to support you as loudly and I'm not going to cheer as loudly because I don't want the insurance carrier thinking that it was my advice to get them out there. So it's a good thing to have a pro come out firsthand and maybe even more than one just to kind of give you that assessment because the guy would have gone with what he was told. He would have been very upset and he probably would have still, ended up having to pay all that anyway. So that's a pretty good way to do things. And that's what I love about my career and my industry is helping people. So and I'll tell you, one of the biggest misconceptions, and this is one of those things that I've noticed it's kind of more a generational thing in that, most homeowners that are, say, 65 and above, they have more of an old school mindset in that this has been a relational thing from day one. I've worked with Bob Smith at, XYZ Insurance since 1970, and Bob has always been my dude. So I don't want to do anything that's going to be wrong to Bob. I'm in San Antonio. I've been working with Jay Franklin. Jay is an awesome guy. He's a great golfer. We have fun. I don't want to go and file an insurance claim because I don't want Jay to have anything to deal with, and I don't want Jay to have to mess with it. And I think the biggest misconception for a lot of people is in a situation where you've got storm related damage, you've got hail, Jay's not really the guy that's going to be helping you. So explain a little bit about what your role would be for your clients in that, and just really how limited that would be, and why basing that relationship on the decision-making process is maybe not always the most advisable way to go.
Right. Well, so if somebody calls me and says, and I have this happen quite a lot, where they call and say, I think we have, all my neighbors are getting new roofs. I had a guy from San Angelo call a few months ago and said, every one of my neighbors is getting a new roof. And I think I need one too. I said, well, okay. And just because your neighbors are getting one doesn't mean that it has damage, which they may very well. Doesn't mean that you have damage. Just like, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, all of that, you can see something just totally destroyed, a whole neighborhood, a whole block of houses, but there's one house that has nothing. And it's the same thing with the hailstorms. Somebody, your next door neighbor on both sides may have hail damage. It's horrible. And you may not have had any. It's kind of weird how that all happens. But if they call me, it's my responsibility. I need to file a claim. I'm there for the customer. The insurance is there to help them if they need help and they have an actual claim. But what I would also explain is how the claim process works. We're going to send out an adjuster. It's not going to be most likely not going to be an employee of the company, but we're going to send out an adjuster. They're on the company's payroll. So they're going to come out and they're going to look at it. And you may very well have hail damage and they may agree and you may get your house replaced. It may be right on the edge of needing to be replaced. And he's going to say, no, it's not, you don't have enough hail damage because he thinks he's helping the company. Well, and it's not that bad. It doesn't meet their criteria. I think a lot of them, and you probably know more than I do, but they'll take a square, I don't know if it's 12 by 12 or what it is, and they'll see how many dents are in that square. And that tells you whether it's warranty of a hail damage or not, or hail claim. But they'll come out and they'll look at it. But if you do or you don't have a legitimate claim, they're not going to look at your roof and say, this part over here by your chimney, it's got a lot of problems on it. And I see where you've got standing water there. Your roof's been replaced a couple of times, so you probably haven't had a problem because it's fairly new. But if your roof stays on here for an extra few years, the water's going to eventually find its way into your house. And they're not going to tell. An adjuster's not going to tell you that you need to have somebody come out and look at it. Some of those insurance or roofing companies that are going out there are they're not doing that either. They're telling you to call the insurance company right away because they are selling you on price. They're only selling you on price. We'll give you a free roof or close to a free roof. Call the insurance company and then give me a call after they've come out. And then the insurance company is the bad guy. They don't have to give the customer bad news that, hey, you don't have it. It's the insurance company that's going to be the bearer of bad news. And if they don't have a claim, the roofing or the insurance company isn't going to say, you've got a problem with your flashing up here, and I see some blistering. It's not an insurance problem, but you really should have somebody come out and take a look at all this. They're not going to do that. So it's really best for a customer, a homeowner, to call a good roofing company, have them come out, and I don't know, you probably go out there for free. I don't think you charge to do estimates.
No, I
And,
don't charge for estimates at all.
and
If we get into it deep, then we start having things,
right,
that can tear up. But to get an initial estimate, to get an initial inspection, just to get an assessment, it's absolutely
right,
free of charge. And I tell folks, I put my clients on an annual service contract that's included in every roof. And included in that is you give me a call once a year. I'll come out, I'll do a full inspection. I'll make sure everything is functioning properly to kind of avoid any potential pitfalls. And I will tell you if something's deficient. I will tell you if, they screwed the satellite dish in wrong and now there's a giant swale in your deck.
right,
I'll let you know about that because we're mutually interested in that roof. So that is a very, very good amount of insight as to how that works. And I really appreciate that because I think a lot of the homeowners they just don't know. So you have in the last hour provided so much value. I can't imagine. It's like we're on the same wavelength because I had a whole list of questions and you were just answering the questions before I even asked them.
Sorry about that, host.
No, that is the most perfect way to go about doing a podcast. I appreciate that. I've got two more quick things. Okay. One is going to be completely unrelated and we'll go with that. And then we'll circle back around to finish the show. So unrelated to homeowners insurance, to anything that we've discussed, is our mutual hobby. You and I like to hit little white golf balls around, and you've got much more ability to hit it straight and where you're trying to put it than I do. But we've gone and hit balls a couple times and actually gone and played. Mm-hmm. And because normally I like to ask people the question about what's your craziest client that you've ever had, or what's the most ridiculous story in your career. In this case, it's going to be a little different. And I'm going to ask you, Jay, as a guy who's an accomplished golfer, who's been around and played multiple courses in his life, what is the one golf hole that you've played that was the absolute best that you've ever played a hole in your life? And you'll never forget that story because it was that moment when Jay Franklin could probably be leading at the Masters based on what he just displayed on that hole. So at what point in time did you have your best hole and what was it all about?
So, I don't know.
And see, this is how you know someone's good, because they've got to think about it. I can tell you my best hole without even... I got a birdie one time at Rusted Rail.
About it. What's yours?
Yeah, so my friend Reese Lawson is one of the owners over at Tiger Roofing in Kaufman, Texas, and I'm actually working with them right now. They're building out a new office, and I'm kind of helping them with sales, but these guys have been my friends for years. We've played golf many times, and Reese is a 24-year-old phenom. He probably could play on some kind of a tour, and I'm not just saying that because he's my buddy. He's really good. And so we go out there, and I'm not intimidated by him because I've known him since he was younger. And it's not like I'm going out and playing golf with Jay Franklin, who I was in my own head because I was thinking everything through way before I did it. And that's why I was lobbing him into the creek and coming up with colorful language. But with Reese, I went out there and I thought, okay, the first tee is the one that scares me the most because that's usually when everybody's watching. So I get up there and I'm like, just block it out, Chuck, just boom. I hit this drive and it's perfect. It goes straight down the fairway. And I'm saying probably 265 to 270. I hit it really well, like probably the best drive of my entire life. And this is a par 4, right? I remember every detail. I got my drive. I outdrove Reese by about 5 yards. And he was mad because his drive sucked in his mind. But like John Daly over here is ready to rock. So I'm up and I'm thinking, okay, I got to get it up here to the green. I think I had about a 5-iron, right? And I've been practicing with my 5-iron. The next time you and I play, I might only bring my 5-iron because I think I could probably be better than I was when I had the full assortment. But I got my 5-iron. I put it about 4 feet from the cup, right? Nice. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, like God is watching me right now because this never happens. So we get up there and I'm thinking, okay, I'm putting for birdie here on the first hole. This is the first time I played with this guy one-on-one. Jay, ice water in my veins. Boom. It goes right in. I birdied the first hole. Nice. I believe that 3, I had 17 holes to go. And if I could do the math, I think I averaged a 13 for the remainder of the round. But I got that birdie, and it set the tempo. And for the rest of my life, I had a witness that I can always call and say, dude, I birdied a hole one time. You remember that? And yes, one day I'm going to get lucky and get a hole in one just by complete happenstance. I feel that. And I think if that ever does happen, I'm just going to walk off the course, because at that point,
you've done it all.
I've hit the pinnacle. So tell me a little bit about your, hole 1 on Rusted Rail, where it was like, check me out, everybody. And then, obviously reality comes back later on, and you remember why you get frustrated so often. But what was that perfect hole like for you?
So at my age, I can't remember everything. And then I played so much in my life. I grew up on the golf course, like I said earlier, and I went out there. You can only play a few months a year, but the minute you could see a little patch of green out on the golf course, I would go out and start hitting golf balls. And I'd go every day and I'd play. My dad would come home from work. We'd go out and play 4 or 5 holes before it got dark. And, I played so much back then. And then other times through my life and in school, I played. So I played a lot. But, I think about this a lot. The first hole where I grew up was a short par 4. It was like 320 yards. But I had a little bit of an elevated tee, and it was right next to the swimming pool of the country club. I had to hit a 3-wood on there because I would overdrive the green with the driver. But besides being able to hit it that far, it could go left, it could go right. I could hit it a long ways, and it helped with the scoring. But I'd have a round of 74, and I'd have only 3 pars in the whole round. I'd have 6s and 8s and birdies and eagles. That'd just be horrible. But I get up on that tee, and I can still picture it now. The lifeguard at the swimming pool would come over. I'd be standing on the tee all the way to the back of the tee, and he'd walk over. I guess he probably knew there were 5 or 6 of us at the club that were the better junior golfers, I guess. But he'd come over and watch. And normally when he'd come over there, I'd be nervous about it. And I'd hit my 3-wood right up onto that green. And I eagled it a few times. I usually would always have a birdie on that hole. And I remember that. You remember things when you were young. And one of the lifeguards that did that is actually Jay Shadler, who's an ABC News guy. He was on 2020 a lot, or I guess it's 2020, in a lot of different news shows. But when he was, and now I think he has an art studio or something somewhere. But when he was there, this was in the 70s, and he had long hair. He was just a hippie, like all the lifeguards there were kind of funny. But I go back there now, and I play at that course, and where I would hit my drive, I still think I hit it a long ways, and I still think I play pretty well. But I go out there, and I'm not even close. There was a hole, par 4, where there was a creek about 250 yards out there, and I'd have to hit a 5-wood to keep it back from the creek. And so I hadn't played there for years, and the last time I went there, I got up my 5-wood, and I thought, well, I'm going to hit it and see how. I just got to keep it short of that creek. And I hit it, and I get up there, and I'm like 80 yards short of the creek. And so, I still think I'm that good, but when I go places where I played when I was younger, I have had a couple of hole-in-ones. One was in 1976, and one was in probably 1987 or 88. So they've been a long time ago, but those are fun. I didn't walk out, it was good. I've had some rounds where I've thought this should be it, or I'm really great. And then the next time I go out, it's horrible. but golf's a game where you just don't know. I mean, you could shoot great one day, and look at Tiger Woods. He had a couple of those guys at the British Open. I think had like 80, 81, 82, and they have good and bad days too. But
it makes me feel good when I see that those guys have a bad day. But then I realized they were talking about Tiger's son the other day, and they said, he shot at 81 and he's disappointed. And I thought, man, if I ever shoot at 81, I will be screaming from the highest mountaintops. Like,
you
I'm
could
the
do
man.
it. You have a good swing and you hit a good ball. You could do it. But yeah,
it's going to take some time, but I'm definitely putting in the effort and I'm working on it. And it's a lifelong hobby that I've got now. So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate you letting me go out there and hack around a little bit, sight unseen. I know that you probably were very impressed by my ability to put the ball into the trees and the water, even the trees and water that weren't on the holes that we were supposed to be shooting on. So it was a lot of fun, and I continue to get better. And the next time we play, you'll see an improvement. So I appreciate that. And now this is one of my favorite parts of the show. And it's not because we're winding it down, but because I appreciate you very much taking the time today on Sunday morning to be here with me on Keepin It Rio. You just provided so much valuable information that's going to help homeowners all over the nation, not just San Antonio, but you're going to help people with homeowners insurance questions everywhere. I've been on the island of Vanuatu as far as my broadcast goes. So you may be getting insurance on, thatch roofs in the middle of the Pacific. But in order for that to happen, my friend, there's one thing that we need to cover, and that is how can the folks that are watching Keepin It Rio or listening to us today, how can they get a hold of you for their insurance needs? If someone's saying right now, hey, man, this guy Jay makes some good points. I've been paying on my escrow account for 30 years or 10 years or whatever, and I don't even know what I've got, but they look into it. They don't like what they see, and now they want someone that's going to provide them the best value and the best product. How do they go about finding you, and how do they go about becoming a client?
Well, great. I'm glad you asked that. And it is, if somebody's been with their agent for 30 years, they may be getting the best service, the best price or anything. And I know you asked this, and then we went on another topic, and I'll make this really quick, but they should check their insurance every year. Maybe not even for the price, but to make sure that the value of their home is good. And a lot of insurance companies, they have different rating factors, and every couple of years, every 2 or 3 years, you should check around. Even if you're going to stay with your same guy, keep them honest and check around with different companies to make sure that you are getting the best rate. If you got tons of money and you don't care and you're just happy to be with Jay Franklin, then stay with Jay Franklin. But it's not a bad idea to check around. An independent agent like ourselves can check multiple companies, but just to make sure that you are getting the best price, and you're not paying too much for insurance. Your house isn't overinsured. It's not underinsured. It's just a good idea. There are people that we've saved half on their homeowner insurance. They're paying $5,000 or $6,000, and we're down to $2,000 because the insurance companies keep bumping it up every year, and there's better options out there sometimes. But if they want to get a hold of us, our company is called Trojan Insurance Group, and we're in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us on the web at trojanins.com, and my email is real easy. It's j@trojanins.com, and you can look that up and find our phone number. I can give it to you. It's 210-802-2240. But we're on the internet, and they can find us and find me, and we'll be happy to even answer questions. We've gone 13 minutes over now. I just like to talk. And if you want to ask questions about insurance or golf or anything else, I'm happy to chat with people and make sure that they understand what they're doing. A lot of people I talk to around here that they ask questions about insurance. I don't try to sell them. I give them the best answer and the best advice I can. And, if they want to go farther with that, that's great. But, we're here to help, kind of like you. Been around a while, and I just like to help people out and meet new people and, do what I can to help make the world a better place.
That's it. One homeowner at a time. And we love it. And I can't say enough how much I appreciate the time today. This is a quality guy, everybody. If you're looking for homeowners insurance, like I said, this is a guy that's going to take care of you. The last hour and 13 minutes are a clear illustration of his passion and knowledge. And the simple fact is he's doing it for the right reason. So anyone that's watching Keeping It Rio, like I always say, I appreciate you all very much. The show has got its crazy life of its own, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Episode 175 is going to bring a lot of value. And for everyone that stuck around, thank you. Until the next time, I always love to end it with the corniest tagline in the history of podcasts, or maybe in the history of the world. And that simply is, keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you guys.